So welcome everyone. Welcome to Incubate Foundation's Business Unusual series where we'll be interviewing 8 Black entrepreneurs within our community who are doing amazing things with their businesses and also be gaining insights on their entrepreneurial journey. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet. I'm in the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So welcome, Dr. Omaru, to our Business Unusual series.
Thank you for having me. And me too would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners, to their leaders, past, present, and future. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm really excited to have you on board because I don't think we have that many cybersecurity experts within our community. So it's really great for you to be able to be pioneering and championing in this environment, and really looking forward to learning more about you.
Cool. No, I'm happy to be here, and you have the opportunity to learn as much as you need to, because after this, I'm not sharing anymore. So.
Well, there you go. We're going to have the final exclusive with Dr. Omaru. Well, tell us more about yourself. Where did you start? How did your career in cybersecurity begin?
Yeah, look, I was born in Africa, in Botswana, and I first came to Australia in 2005 to study. I was on a scholarship by a mining company in Botswana, De Beers, the largest mining company in the world. So I studied software engineering, finished in 2008, and 2009, I was working for this company in the world's largest diamond mine. As you can recall, 2009, there was a GFC, right, the global financial crisis. And typically with this company and the sort of scholarship I was on, when you finish the study, you're bound to the company for 4 years. You have to work for them for a minimum 4 years. Because of the GFC, they allowed us to, do whatever we want. So that 4-year limit was waived for us. So I decided to come back to Australia. I had the opportunity to come back and join a program where Westpac was funding research with the University of Ballarat, now called Federation University, and also UTS, University of Technology, Sydney. So I got the Ballarat opportunity where Westpac needed the research center to investigate the use of machine learning in internet banking, right? Internet banking security. So I loved it. I loved that role. I did not know what machine learning or AI or cybersecurity was. I just trained as a software engineer. So it was a good challenge. It was new, but also there was research on the other hand, because I was working with researchers at the university, at the research center, but also with Westpac fraud and security teams on the other hand. So, it was good to have, both fit in different domains. I did that for 3 years. And in the process, I earned a PhD. I was awarded a PhD for that work, which is where the PhD comes in. So PhD in applied machine learning or applied AI. But for the bank, they got what I still say was their first AI capability. To be able to say, I provided Westpac Bank their first AI capability is a big deal. I love that. So I enjoyed doing that piece of work. And then I left and joined Computershare, which is a share registry technology company. I was a security engineer at Computershare. I did that for 2 years and a bit. And then I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers as a consultant. Started off as a senior consultant focusing on EUM, energy utilities mining. Towards the end of my tenure at PwC, I was specializing in architecture mainly, but also now looking mainly in FS, financial sector. So again, very interesting tenure I had at PwC. I loved the variety of the role. I loved the technical aspects of it, the customer-facing parts of it, and I learned a lot, as you can imagine. And then in 2017, I started my own company. I started Aiculus to be an API security product, right? It was a risk. I was aware of the risky side of that. But what helped, there were things that helped there. The first thing was I started Aiculus under this program called CyRise. It's an accelerator, cybersecurity accelerator. So that meant there was a curated program through which I could learn about business, about fundraising, importantly contacts, right? With accelerators, what you get a lot out of them is the contacts. So I love that. And then the other very fortunate thing for me was when I was at, the PhD work that I was doing with Westpac, the director there had just taken up a new role at one of the universities in Melbourne, right? And that university was introducing Master of Cybersecurity. And so, so they needed some a curriculum designed. They needed some work done for the courses. So he reached out to me. He thought I was with my old organization. So he reached out to me and he asked if my organization that I was with could help develop that stuff, because they were looking for the material to be designed by, industry experts rather than purely from an academic theoretical perspective. So just as well, he reached out to me and I put my hand up to do that piece of work. So probably the first 7 months of Aiculus, I was doing a lot of writing cybersecurity courses for this master's program. So that helped with, paying the bills, making sure that there was a little bit of money coming at home. I ultimately ended up even teaching 2 of the subjects that I developed, which is great. Met lots of, bright people when I was a industry professor at Trobe. So that also kind of added to the mix of my career, because, I thought I was done with, employed kind of settings, but being an industry professor with that university with La Trobe was amazing. I learned a lot from the students. As much as my job was to teach them, I also learned a lot from them. And so fast forward to to now, Aiculus is a bigger company than it was those days. We have 4 people in Melbourne. We've had 2 people in Singapore over the last year and a bit. And we are in Melbourne, we are in Singapore. We have customers in Australia and Singapore. Iterating internationally, really. So to compress my life story, that's kind of what it's been like.
That is absolutely very intriguing and very like so many different chapters and experiences that sort of made up to the point where you are now, which is really, really very inspiring. I'm curious to sort of know whether you ever thought that you would be in this space where you are doing cybersecurity. I mean, you said you started off as a software engineer. Was this something that you were thinking of doing?
Yeah, look, no, that's the truth. I'd never thought I'd be here, because when I first came to Australia, leaving Africa, I had always wanted to go back to Africa. Growing up, you always see the difference between Africa and the rest of the world. And you're like, what I'm going to do when I get old is to help contribute to Africa. So coming to Australia, I always knew I wanted to go back to Botswana, to be, at the base, because in my opinion, the reason why Africa is lagging behind is because the people who can make a difference choose to leave. They go overseas, they look for better opportunities. And therefore, ultimately, we're always losing talent to better countries that are doing better, right? So I thought I would go back and just be there and hold the fort. But, being here now with a family, I don't think I'll be going back soon. I hope to return someday. I'm still very passionate about Africa, the development of Africa, but I also now am realizing that it's time to try and do something while I'm here, because waiting to get there to make a difference, I think it's going to be quite a while. So it's one of those, things I've learned along the way, but never would I have guessed that, I would live in Australia, let alone, I always thought, even when I was studying for the whole 3.5 years, when I was studying my first degree, it was always, I'm here, it's temporary. When I'm done, I'm picking up and going back. So yeah, it's just the way things happened. I'm here now. I love being here. I also want to contribute not just to Africa, but also in Australia, because I live here. I'm getting a lot of benefit from being in Australia. Therefore, I sort of owe Australia as well.
Absolutely. And I can actually resonate with your story of wanting to go back, because I remember 10 years ago when I first came here, I was like, we'll try it out, see how it goes. And then, identify whether I want to stay here, because it wasn't home, didn't feel like home. And I missed home a lot more, especially in my first few years.
Yeah.
But after some time, I'm like, actually, yeah, I can do stuff and everything.
That's right.
The need of wanting to contribute back to the community back home is always a longing for me, but it's like, well, what is the most effective way of doing that?
That's right.
And sometimes it's just building something here that can then further benefit.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, amazing. So in your journey, when it came to 2017, what made you decide that, I can start a business?
Yeah, it's funny. I was working for PwC one day, and my wife and I went on a holiday. I'd always kept a plan, and the thing is, I live in Ballarat, right? I don't live in Melbourne, so Ballarat is very cold. And I started work at 8 a.m. in Melbourne. That meant I had to get up super early in Ballarat, get on probably the first or the second train. I was always on the first or the second train. So that type of hustle makes you really think hard about what it is you want to do. Because I had to decide, is this me? Is this me being on the train at 6 a.m. in the morning in a cold Ballarat morning, going to Melbourne, only to come back at 6 p.m. and it's dark and it's cold again for 5 days. And the only days I get to leave are Saturday, Sunday, right? So every day you confront that question, which is, how long, how long am I doing this for? And at some point I knew that, I want to learn as much as I can from all these jobs that I'm doing, and ultimately convert all the skills into a company that I can run. I can dictate what the company does. I can dictate how to run the company, So those early days when I was on the train in the mornings, I just started having this idea to say, at some point I'm going to start a company. And then I met this lady on the train, and she said, "Is there a plan, or this is just some ambition that you have?" And so I started to put together a plan. So when I was on holiday with my wife, that day was when I started putting, because I didn't take my laptop. We were just out in Bright. Bright's like deep in Victoria. And I started putting together a plan, and it was a 24-month plan. And this was in 2016. And the plan was, in 24 months, in 2 years, I would leave PwC and start Aiculus. But what ended up happening was, I think it ended up being 10 months from the time I was in Bright. The CyRise opportunity showed up. I had some things that I knew I needed to do on that little plan, and I still have it on my mobile because it was handwritten. So I'm like, this is the chance, because part of that plan said that I needed to have a bit of money just for the company. So the CyRise opportunity came with a 50K grant, right? So I'm thinking, if I look at that plan, a big part of what I needed to have in place, this 50K can take care of that. So, that's kind of how it happened. There was always a plan. I thought it would take longer, but I jumped sooner than I thought.
Well, it's amazing how when you start aligning yourself to your plan, you suddenly have all these opportunities coming up for you, where you then jump onto them because you have a plan, exactly what it is that you want. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So in terms of like when you were thinking of starting a business, did you have like a mentor or someone that you look up to that was sort of helping you throughout the journey?
Yeah. Look, the way I do mentoring is I don't come up to you and say, hey, could you be my mentor? I come up to you and I ask for advice. And if I kind of like the way you're thinking, I'll come back again and we catch up for a coffee. And I'm sliding a question, hey, Shemaine, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And I usually have a few people who help with that sort of thing. But there was nobody that I ever went to and said, hey, could you be my mentor? Or somebody who said, hey, I want to mentor you. But there's a lot of people I ask difficult questions, personal questions. So I have a few people like that. In terms of starting the company, I did get advice. Some of it I didn't even ask for it. It was just forthcoming. And the advice was, you do know what you're doing, right? It's risky. It can backfire badly, it's real. That's the truth. It's a big risk. I started a company when I had how old is she? I had a 2-year-old daughter, 2 or 1. I had a young daughter, commitments, right? Things that, you kind of really need to take seriously before you start leaving your job. So a lot of the advice I got was, that you have real responsibilities. Don't forget those. And it's good advice because it straightens you up. You know that, you can call it Aiculus, you can call it whatever, but the bottom line is it needs to help maintain the life at home. And so that's always been the reality check at the back of my mind is, I remember the very early days we would go to, have friends over, go to gatherings, and people would ask, so how is it going at PwC? And I'd say, yeah, it's going well. I didn't reveal it, early because I was quite not sure I was always conscious about the kind of feedback I wanted. And I knew that for some people, if I said, oh, I left PwC, what are you doing? Or working for myself, it sounds so stupid, How do you leave PwC to work for yourself? So, there was always that reality check. It's everywhere. I mean, you tell anyone that you work for yourself, it's like, really? So, but now it's I no longer work for myself. I work for Aiculus. And then the question is, who's Aiculus? It's a cybersecurity company, So I've had to learn to put it out there in a good way, but also to own the feedback I get, which is, it's a risky time to start businesses. I know that. I've been at it now. This is the 4th year. So, yeah.
And that's a very enriching journey as well. And I mean, as you said before, those early morning trips, that's be it hour and a half, traveling from Ballarat to Melbourne for that paycheck,
Yeah.
it becomes really, you have to decide. It's like, well, what do I want my life to be? And very inspiring to sort of hear that, you decided to design your own life, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. And, I met very inspiring people on the train. I met this gentleman, he'd been on the train for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, doing the same thing. Because Ballarat is such a small city, some jobs you just can't get here. But the lifestyle here is I prefer Ballarat to Melbourne, right? I choose to be here any day. And so I had so much respect for such people, because only commitment can get you on that train every single day, go through the winters and just still do it. So I had met people who I really have massive respect for. But I also knew that it just wasn't me. It never occurred to me that I would be doing that every day. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean,
and interesting how conversation training helped
correct.
You make a decision.
Yeah, and because for me it was like it's an hour. The morning train, fortunately, the trains that I was on, fortunately, they're express, right? They don't stop everywhere, so it ends up being an hour 15-minute train. The ones that stop everywhere are close to 2 hours because it's an hour 45 minutes. And that time ended up being just my own time to do my own things, right? To think about things. And when I was doing my PhD, there was a time, academic writing was just too much. I was just like, okay, this is too much. So I started writing essays on the side, just get out of the academic writing where you have to cite everything you say, the sky is blue according to blah, 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 and you cite, and it's you kind of feel like there's nothing you can say. Somebody should have done the research for you to say that. So it was clogging my head. So I would spend Monday to Friday doing that. And then on weekends and sometimes some Fridays, I would just take time out and just write essays, which are just my opinions, my thoughts. I don't have to cite anybody, right? And so when I finished my PhD and started traveling to Melbourne, I realized I had like 45 of these essays. And my girlfriend at the time was saying, why don't you turn them into a book of essays? So that time on the train then also went into editing those pieces. Every single day I'd have my earphones and I would get my laptop and I'd just edit my pieces, one way, two, one way back, one way, two, one way back. Before you know it, I had a complete manuscript. So the year that I started Aiculus, I also, published my book, which kind of was from, small pieces on the train. So it's when I get on the train now, which I still do, because of the lockdowns and all of that, I haven't been for a while, but every time I get on the train and I sit on that chair and pull back the, the tray on the V line, I always get this instinct to say, okay, what am I doing now? And I always have to remind myself, no, today I'm just closing my eyes and sleeping, So yeah, it was, I look back fondly at that time because I was knuckling down really hard on that train.
Wow. So with all the the essays that you were putting through, that's very interesting as well, with the way that you just shifted to sort of get out of that, academic mindset you talked about.
Yeah.
And well, tell us more about this book. Now I'm interested. Where can I get it? What is it about?
Yeah, it's about a few things. I would write about, the environment, climate change, global warming. In one instance, I would write about, I remember in 2012 or 13, Oxford Dictionary always have the word of the year. 2012 or 13, the word of the year was squeezed middle, right? And squeezed middle essentially means people who aspire to be the middle class. These are the people who work hardest. They kind of they get paid median salary if you compare to really wealthy people and people who paid low wages. The squeezed middle sit in the middle. In terms of mortgages, these are the people who have the most mortgages. They're the mode in terms of having mortgages. So I was intrigued by that word because I felt like that was me. I was the squeezed middle. And I was feeling the squeeze, and I could see that I was, in that squeeze where, you get your home loan and you spend the rest of your life working for it, which is a beautiful thing. It's good to work for something. So I wrote about that as well. The positive aspects of it, which is you get to have a home to raise your kids in your own home. The negative side, which is, that marriage is that mortgage is kind of like your second way, why, you're bound to that thing. So I would write about things that confuse me, things that I really knew well. I would write about Africa, the culture across Africa. The one piece I wrote about is the dress code across Africa, starting from, up in the desert, the Sahara Desert, where people wear robes, right? You get down in the middle of Africa and Kenya, where people wear shukas, bright colored cloths, right? And then towards the bottom in Botswana, where I'm from, in the Kalahari Desert, where they wear leather, budgie smugglers, if I may use that term, right? Pretty much the whole body is exposed apart from yeah. So there's a piece there that talks about that. And then just before my daughter was born, I also wrote a letter to her before she was, because I was scared about her coming, because I was just thinking, what am I going to teach this person? I'm still learning myself. So I wrote a little letter there for her. So it's a book about a whole lot of things. It's on Amazon, by the way. So, and also, by the way, you asked about Omaru, and I'll tell you the Omaru story. So my birth name is Warabile, which is a Setswana name, and my surname is Maruatona, right? Omaru is the O is from Warabile, and the Maru is from Maruatona, my surname. So Omaru is a name I adopted because Warabile is hard to pronounce in Australia. So, and I realized that, you know, fondliness, friendliness, all of those things, a key part of that is people being able to pronounce your name without, without cringing, And so quickly I kind of changed from Warabile to Omaru. So the part about scribes and da-da-da-da-da, forget that. So Omaru that's where it's coming from. It's all from Warabile and Maru from Maruatona. So part of writing the book as well was to, pay respect to the name that my mother gave me. So the book is published under my, my birth name, the name that my mother gave me. So here's the book.
Abstraction.
Yeah. See how it's got my proper name?
Yes.
Yeah. So Omaru is this O here and the Maru from here.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Who switched up your name, and I mean that's like a whole other conversation.
Correct.
About, changing names, especially when you come to the Western world and people how they pronounce your name as well. So yeah, very, very interesting. In terms of your journey, during starting up your business, what has been like some of your greatest challenges or your biggest lessons that you've learned from having a paycheck to working for yourself?
Yeah. The big challenge is the uncertainty, especially if you've worked for PwC was the best company I ever worked for. They gave us free coffee every morning, as many coffees as you want, And one of the first things I learned when I worked for myself was coffee is expensive. So you kind of get spoiled when you have an employer like that because you get everything, When I was traveling, part of what you get when you start at PwC is you get a backpack and you got a travel bag, right? And a laptop bag, obviously. And these are really decent. This is decent gear. The backpack is quite a good backpack. The little travel bag is also quite good. So it was the best job I could have ever wished for. The variety of the work was amazing. So when you finish that off and you're losing the certainty of being able to honor your cost of living, it's quite a heavy load. So the first thing to learn was just to live with that uncertainty, to say, I know why I left, which was to try and get something better. Where I can to show others that it is doable, right? That being said, the thing is you're never guaranteed the thing you aspire for, right? And for me, it's not about that. For me, it's more go on the journey, go as far as you can. When I'm done, if ever I end up going back to paid employment, I know that a lot of people will look at that and go, it's doable, right? The idea is to start somewhere and get others to better that, right? And so that was the first thing to learn. The challenges were, it's like you're remaking yourself. And when you're remaking yourself, a lot of people will still see you as, who they know you to be typically, right? And so the first thing I did when I started Aiculus is, because I was a consultant, I'd pretty much go to the same people and say, hey, I've got this product. I think it can help your company. The first thing is disbelief, is shrugging of the shoulders to say, hey, you were just working for PwC. What product are you talking about? So it takes a lot of pushing and knocking to kind of undo, how people perceive you, and to start to, it's credibility to be credible enough for people to think, okay, let's consider the Aiculus product. It's a lot of work. It's something that even now, we're still trying to get that credibility. So there's a lot of that. And then, there's a whole, learning curve about fundraising, going to an investor and saying, I have a business. This is how this business in a few years' time makes you more than the $1 million I'm asking you to give me, right? So, because for me, I knew I was battling a lot of things. A lot of the VCs I spoke to had not spoken to somebody like me. The startup founder looks a particular way, has done a few particular things to be where they were. So I was different in so many ways, right? And so going into those doors, knocking, saying, "Hey, I need funding, I need this," you get scrutinized, which I welcomed. In some cases, I felt like, you could tell where some of the uncertainty or whatever the reception was from the other side was purely because of the novelty of who I was as asking for money. But being able to not make that a thing that hinders you is very important. It's easy to hold on to that and wallow in that self-pity and just suffocate yourself. But it's very important to say, there is this thing called the cost of doing business. And that thing is one of those things. If you're doing something that nobody else has done, all the things that whoever needs to pay for doing that, you're the first to pay that price, and you just need to deal with it and move on. So yeah, fundraising, I learned a lot looking for money for Aiculus. I was asking for a lot of money, as I said, 1 million. And at the time, it was just me, who gives money to this individual, right? So yeah, I learned a lot about that. So lots of learnings, lots of challenges, but sometimes, and being here now, having raised that money, I don't know, I think there was luck involved, right? But as they say, you create your luck, you just go hard at it, make sure because you'll meet really friendly VCs who will laugh and say, it's a good idea, let us think about it, and you just never get anywhere. And you'd meet others who would say, I don't think this thing can work, and this is why I don't think so. So you take that feedback, convert it into something that's constructive, and take the story to the next person. If they have those same fears, you address them, right? Incrementally learning. I remember I was in London and it was cold. I wasn't aware it would be that cold. And my first meeting was just terrible. It was combative. It was hostile. And I had 2 more to do that day. And I called my wife, and I was kind of whinging. I was complaining to say, my first meeting was bad. I'm even thinking about just not doing this. And she's like, that's not why you went there. You went there to do all the meetings. So just finish the meetings, then we can complain later and finger point later. And it was sharp, but it was very it was awakening to say, actually, I came here to do all the meetings. I can't be here and saying, I don't want to do the others. So there's a lot of that self-motivation that you have to do a lot, even when you don't feel like, just go to this place in your head where you're happier and just sit there, do that next meeting, and then you complain later. Yeah.
You bring a very valid point there about being your own self-motivator and also, just being persistent. Before I continue, we can start taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for Dr. Omaru, please use the Q&A section and we'll start addressing those. I like the idea that you talked about in terms of, being able to focus on what it is that you have set yourself out for, and having an accountability partner as well. So your wife is your accountability partner, and just giving you a reminder of why you're there. Because sometimes, yeah, it's easy to get disheartened, but using that feedback as constructive learning is actually like a very, very good and very valid point.
Yeah. Look, I think partners
from the audience. Just waiting. All right, we'll allow for the audience to do some questions, but yeah, no, you can proceed.
Yes, I was saying the accountability from a partner, from a sister, from a friend, it's important, because the other thing as well is you could just be at it for way too long and not go anywhere, right? You don't want to go in too deep. That's the other thing. So me having her, it also helped with knowing when to disconnect and go back to. There was always a time. It was time boxed. We had agreed that if we reached a certain period and there was really nothing, then we would go back. Because in the end, it was something for me to try. Try it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, all good. I could move on and get another job. And so, yeah. I think accountability from another person is super critical.
And what advice would you give to someone who wants to, become an entrepreneur and start in that space? What would that look like? What are some of the key things that they just need to remember?
Yeah, I would say planning is important. Research is important. Be informed by the facts, right? And then just methodically trying things. What I mean is try things, but also know when it's working and when it's not working. I think it's very important to be able to know that this thing hasn't worked, move on to the other thing, or this thing works, let's do it better. So yeah, I'd say, that. And also as well, a lot of businesses, when you start, the first few years are quite hard. And those first few years is when you also need to be enterprising, entrepreneur. So enterprising means find other ways to make money. You could be starting a business where you want to be, a counselor, a motivator. If you have nobody to motivate and you can wash dishes, then do that. Because anything to keep you on your path, on your goal, whatever it is, I think that's super important. For me, as I said, I developed a curriculum for a university. I taught at a university. I developed a cybersecurity training course for a provider in Melbourne. I consulted for a company that wanted, to use a public platform to get data from. So I did a lot of bits and pieces before the business really took off doing what it does. So, being able to do other things. I think in Shona it's called Kugadzira, right? You got a Gadzira on the side.
Yeah. We actually have a question from the audience. So Kadra has asked, how can we overcome obstacles and uncertainty of COVID when opening a new business?
Yeah, COVID is a nuisance, right? We were just talking, Charmaine, before that. I'm struggling with it. But the other thing that I'm hearing a lot is, part of being a business that survives, that's persistent, is learning to deal with the uncertainty. So to the question about how do we overcome COVID-related obstacles, I think most of it is digital. Some people call it being digital native. Learn to have your business products available digitally, learn to be able to acquire customers digitally, learn to be able to conduct your business digitally. Because the big thing that COVID does is it keeps us away from each other. It keeps us away from our customers. It keeps us away from our community. So finding a way to circumvent that, to say, we may not be together physically, but we can be together digitally, just like we are now, right? I think that's important. Obviously, if it's a business that's going to need VC funding or external funding, again, being able to fundraise digitally kind of gets into that. So yeah, I'd say, just right now, a way to deal with COVID is, we've digitized a lot of things.
Yeah, and everyone is now operating digitally. And this is going to be basically our reality probably for the next 12 to 24 months until
for a long time. Yeah.
Some level of certainty.
Yeah.
And even regardless of just the ongoing communication and even some of the products and services that are coming about, they're very digitally focused. And for people who know about the Internet of Things, that's also another thing that's going to be happening.
Correct.
So basically, this is the future. In essence,
agreed.
It's almost like we accelerated 2030 to 2021.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's. I think for me, like many other people, I got caught off guard because I never thought it would come so soon, because it kind of like slapped all of us in our faces, and we're trying as much as we can to go back to old ways of doing things. But you're right, this is probably the reality going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I hope you are happy with that answer, Kadra. Any other questions from our audience? Well, how have you navigated COVID with
COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I was fortunate enough to be able to raise VC funding. The money was paid to Aiculus in June 2020. Obviously, to get that money, there was a plan to say this is how we're going to use the money. A big part of it was to build a team around Aiculus, right? So the money came, the first thing to do was to build a team. And recruitment and employing people online was a challenge, a big challenge. We did a lot of things wrong. In the end, I paid a recruiter to find us the people we needed. In some cases, some of these people were offshore, as I was saying, in Singapore, right? And I've never imagined that I would hire somebody and they would be in the team without me having met them. But that was our reality. We just had to navigate that and make sure that things are getting done. It's not ideal, but we were pushed into that corner, and we just had to go with the flow. So we recruited online, we hired online, and the team met online. We had lunch and learns online. Not ideal, but we just had to there was no other way. I couldn't travel to Singapore, they couldn't come here. And the Melbourne team, some of them were hired that way, but since then we've met and interacted so many times. So
yeah, that's good. Well, interactions online, working from home, again, another reality we have to deal with, in this uncertain space. So, well, it's good to know that you were able to survive throughout COVID, because not many businesses, let alone established businesses, have been able to overcome, COVID. So it's still an ongoing challenge.
It is. And what I'm also learning, Charmaine, is that when we got to, say, January 2021, we thought, we survived, only to realize that this thing's not over yet, right? So I don't want to celebrate yet. I just want 2022 and maybe even 2023 to come and go. And then I'd say I've survived, because the challenges persist. I still haven't been to Singapore. I had a business visa for Singapore. It's expired. I can't renew it because I need to be in the country to be able to get a fresh one. So, things are things I never thought I could do without. I'm having to do without, right? This business visa is very important to me. And right now I don't have it. And I just hope I'll be able to find a way to get a new one. But it's no way is it over yet. That's for sure.
And how have you been coping personally, with all of the ups and downs and uncertainties, whilst trying to manage Aiculus as well?
Yeah, look, I run for sanity. That's number one, right? And then I rely a lot on my family. As I said, I live with my wife. I've got 3 kids. I really use them in terms of just being an emotional support. I don't think they know how much they use, but I rely on them a lot. So, but yeah, I 2020, I ran way more than I've ever run in a year, because every time I was feeling, there was a time even when you could not be outside without a mask, unless if you're doing exercise or running. So being out there, breathing fresh air without a mask was like a privilege. And so whenever I could, you'd see me out there running, no mask on, and it was like, wow, I'm so lucky. So I was able to kind of, get those little privileges that, I could get really. So I really survived from just running to I guess, breathe, meditate while I'm running, or, whatever it is that you do when you're kind of looking inwards. I do that when I'm running. So yeah, it was just interesting to realize that 2020 of all years, I've run, because I track my runnings, I've run more than I've ever run ever in my life. So I ran through COVID essentially.
Well, I'm so glad that, you've got something to just, help you throughout this process. Because anything that brings you joy, that, keeps you sane, you have to adopt in this
right.
time. Yeah. So what's next for Aiculus?
We're still quite small, so next is just growth. We still need to grow. We really want to be a default API security provider. We want to be the cyber AI company. I think in terms of what we're doing, there's still a lot of room for innovation. There's still a lot of room for us to really own the space and own the category. And I'm really happy with what we've achieved so far. We've been on a good trajectory. We've won awards in Singapore. We've won awards in Australia. So, as much as I don't want to read too much into those awards, there's something tells me we're kind of doing something right. So, I'm happy with where we are. I'm happy with the team. And, they also understand that this is no way the ultimate. We still need some growing to do. We still have lots of goals to kick. So, we keep growing, and there's just space for that, really.
Absolutely. We will be cheering you on the sidelines.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Omaru, for sharing your personal journey and experience. Really insightful to know about, how you've been able to leverage all the skills and experiences that you've had over time for you to be able to carve something out for yourself and build your company, Aiculus. We're definitely looking forward to seeing what happens next with Aiculus, and who knows, there might be your future employee listening to this.
Everyone is welcome, that's for sure.
Indeed. So we wish you nothing but the best with Aiculus. We hope it does become the household name within the cybersecurity realm, and we'll continue to advocate for you and cheer for you in wherever we are.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I hope we get to work together again. I love what you're doing at Incubate Foundation. So whenever there's an opportunity to contribute, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. Will do. Well, that's it for this evening, everyone. Again, thank you, Dr. Omaru, for your time. Next week, we'll be back again, same time, same place, with another Black entrepreneur who's in another yet interesting industry, which is also a future industry, given that everyone is now going digital. So watch our social medias for the next announcement of what panelist is going to be. Have yourself a wonderful evening and stay safe and stay sane. Thanks, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye.